On this episode of Busted Classic Garage, I'm going to show you the gear that I use to make these YouTube videos. And I'll also show you an easy and cheap way to attach an external microphone, like the Rode VideoMic Pro, to a Zhiyun Crane Gimbal. With power tool right around the corner, I should be focusing all my energy on the Camaro behind me. But there's a couple things I have to do to my gear to make my life on power tour a little bit easier. So I think this is the perfect opportunity for me to talk to you guys about the production of Busted Classic Garage. What is a gimbal, you might ask? Well, it's a device that stabilizes the pan, tilt, and roll of your camera. What that basically means is when you're shooting handheld, it gets rid of the shakiness and the vibration. Most higher priced Canon lenses do come with optical stabilization, but that only takes you so far. That's where the gimbal plays a huge role in video making. Alright, so let's start this off by talking about the camera that I'm using. I'm using a Canon EOS Rebel T6i, which is basically right at the top of the beginner line. The next camera online you could get would be the T6S, which has a couple more features, but beyond that you're getting into the professional line of like the 70D. This camera has a 24.2 megapixel sensor, and it has a pretty decent autofocusing system. Nothing like the 70D. You'll notice in a lot of my videos, the camera will just go out of focus, especially when there's a lot of movement happening. By the way, if you're wondering how I'm getting this amazing blurry background, that is the nifty 50 on my camera right now. It's a 15mm prime lens with a 1.8 f-stop, which creates a great depth of field. This is a 200 zoom lens. I actually use this for some of the roadkill events when I was sitting at the grandstands, because this gives me a nice zoom, but without stabilization it is pretty shaky. That's what you get for buying cheap lenses. They do not have stabilization like the kit lens does. Alright, so as far as lenses go, I'm back on my 18-55 kit lens. Great lens, cheap lens, not a really good blurry background, but it works. And this is what I used for, I want to say 90% of my shooting. Honestly, the only time I ever use the nifty 50 is if I'm doing some kind of B-roll sequence, or if I want to just get a nice blurry background in an intro or something like that. Another thing that's very important when you're shooting on a DSLR is a neutral density filter. What that is, it's basically sunglasses for your camera. Now, when you're taking pictures and it's too bright outside, it's a very simple solution. And what that does is it lets less light into the camera. When you're shooting video, you really don't have that option. So if you're shooting 24 frames per second, you want to double up your shutter speed. So if you're shooting 30, you want to be at 60 shutter speed. If you're shooting at 24, you want to be at 48, but obviously there's no 48, so you're going to be at 50. All right, I think there's some sun coming in, so I can give you guys a really good idea of what this neutral density filter does. Come on, sun, just waiting on you here. Okay, so this is without the neutral density filter. Now it's on there, but it's opened up all the way. It's just gonna get worse now. I can barely see right now. Now, if I just kind of move this over, you'll see that get a little, I can't even see myself. Oh my God, all right. I'm completely blind right now. Hopefully you guys can see me. Okay, you see that? It's a huge difference. Right now it is the middle of the day, the sun's right up above, and it is just beaming down on me. And this shot is actually salvageable. Now, you might ask yourself, why don't I just record in automatic mode? The problem is, in automatic mode, the camera will compensate by changing your frame rate. I meant to say shutter speed. So, I don't want that. Oh, wow, that's bright. Yeah, see, let's turn it down a little bit. So I think you guys get the point. And with cheap neutral density filters, what will happen is you'll get an X pattern. The darker you go, and obviously this is a cheap one. All right, so there's my gimbal. Let's find a place to put this thing down and do our work. Wait a minute. Okay, that's all Camaro stuff. Oh, we'll put it over here. And that's all Camaro stuff. So I have to, I think, clean up a little bit to make my third bench a little bit more accessible. Now, I could move some of this stuff out of the way, but I got to get that Camaro in here because the weather hasn't really been cooperating. So I need to clean this anyways. So going back to the equipment talk while I'm cleaning up this mess. Lights, also very important. Watch what kind of difference this makes. One more thing about lights. Small lights also help because besides these two big lights behind me, I have a small light over here. Now check this out. You see the difference that makes? And this is like a $12 LED light that I've been using for welding. Works really well. Could be a little bit softer, but it is what it is. Oh, and by the way, all this stuff that I'm going to move, I actually don't have another place to put it. So I'm going to be trying to play a better game of Tetris this time, so I can kind of squeeze these into different areas so I can make room, because with the rain that we've been getting, I'm about to build an ark. And I got to get the Camaro into the garage so I can start working on it, because Power Tour is right around the corner. Man, this garage looks amazing. I played an awesome game of Tetris. Expert level right here. I mean, just look at this right here. Since everything is nice and clean now, let's get to this build. Alright, let's try this again. Oh yeah, look at that. Okay, so here is my Zhiyun Crane V2 Gimbal. It's a 3-axis gimbal. You mount the camera right up top. Right in here. And this basically stabilizes all your shots. Okay, so I'm going to start building this bracket. The plan is I'm going to take this piece of aluminum and I'm going to wrap it around here. And I'm going to mount this right here with a bolt and a nut, bend this over, and this is where my mount's going to go. Boom. Hope you guys can see that first bend going down. So the first bend is done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this around that pipe. Okay, so at this point, this is what it looks like. Okay, so this is where we're at. I end up having to take the tape off because I was just damaging it, so I'll put it back on when it's all done. So I got this thing sitting basically where I want it to be. I'm going to drill a hole through these two pieces, which will ultimately just get, for now, a bolt and nut. I could have just bought something off of Amazon for 20 bucks, but I have all these materials here. And most of my money is wrapped up in Power Tour right now, so wherever I can save a couple bucks, I'm going to. Well, if my goal is to drill a uncentered hole, I succeeded. So that's what we're looking at so far with my completely off-center hole. I should have drilled it with a smaller drill bit first. We're going to start bending it this way. So let's drill the other hole for this piece, so we can feed that through there. And this one, let's try to get this one centered. So I will use a smaller drill bit to start it. That's like dead on. Dead on center. Still moving on me. Unbelievable. I need to get a drill press. There's a lot of tools that I need to get. Drill press is one of them. Things like this would be a little bit more precise. Cool. That's pretty centered. Okay, one more. There's the mount. This portion of the video was filmed with the in-camera mic. So this bracket is all done. I'm pretty happy with it. There's a couple things I ran into. I end up having to enlarge this hole here. And as far as the gaffer's tape goes, I'm not going to put it on the bracket like I originally planned. I'm actually going to put it on the handle of the gimbal like you see here. And I'm going to put some paint on this. As far as this, I'm going to put a washer on there and I will cut this down so it's not protruding out, or maybe I'll even switch it over to the other side. But this is perfect. The way this bracket is set up, it's in the perfect position because I can even put my hand here and I have some gimbal controls here that I can access, and then I can put my other hand here. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. This came out pretty nice and it didn't cost me any money, just a little bit of time. Alright, so we're finally at that point where we can talk about the microphone. So this is a Rode VideoMic Pro, and it has a couple of cool features. One of the features, if you turn this all the way to the right, which it's at right now, that's a high-pass filter which prevents low-end noise like the rumbling of exhaust when you're trying to speak over it. Also, this mic has its own preamp, and has a couple of different dB settings. What that lets you do is bypass the preamp in the camera. Also, if you're recording in a very loud environment, let's say a concert or at a drag strip, you can hit the -10 dB setting. And usually what I do is I just keep it at +20, and then I keep the high pass filter on. I have one other thing that goes along with this microphone, and that is a Deadcat. Not an actual dead cat, but a Deadcat. This squirrel-looking contraption, like my buddy mentioned in one of the other videos. What this does is you throw it on here, and it basically eliminates wind noise, and does a pretty good job. Alright, so for right now, I think I'm going to take this all apart, and I'm gonna scuff it up and sand it, and I'm gonna throw some paint on there. We'll see. If time allows, I will show you guys the finished product, but I mean, it's basically finished, minus the paint. So yeah, I'm fairly happy with it. It's definitely gonna make my life easier when I'm on the road at Power Tour, for sure.